Hi and welcome to show 72. We are joined by our good friend for a great interview at the moment, Spatts from the Criminal Minds.
That's right.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm cool, yeah. It's been a pleasure.
It's a cracking interview.
It's a
Genuinely
cracking
nice
interview.
guy. His aura is in no way the colour of gunmetal.
No, sir. No,
Olive
no.
drab.
Olive drab. Or khaki.
He's bought his all his selection this week.
Otherwise known as khaki.
It's all his selection this week, and we're going to break the rules just because they're definitely coming out on vinyl. So we've got a couple of exclusives, some early demos. They're played on a laptop, which is unusual for us, but they're coming out on vinyl, aren't they, mate?
Exclusives here.
Because a release ain't a release unless it's on vinyl.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So, kicking off, we've got a good few tunes to get through and an interview, so it's going to be a nice packed show this week.
Sit down with your Horlicks.
That's
feet up.
right. Exactly. Get a Plaster C model.
That's a private joke.
So, what we got first?
We got a track which a lot of people probably know is Give It To You by UPP.
Yeah.
They were like a jazz fusion trio from the UK, produced by Jeff Beck.
That's right.
Yes. This is one of my favourite tunes of all time and sampled to death in hip hop.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But we're not going to play the bit that's been sampled, we're playing the start of the track.
Yeah, well, we actually played this track, I think, probably about a year and a half ago, but we only played the second half of the track with the break, so this is the first half, and so there you go.
Well, it's quite an episodic tune, you know, changing throughout. So.
Oh, totally, yeah, very, very progressive.
Yeah, and we're playing it off of the Ultimate Breaks and Beats album, Volume 3.
Yeah, got to respect this album because I think many people bought this back in the day and used it to death.
Yes.
So, yeah, wicked.
No, I have.
So, what are we going to go into after this?
Well, this album was quite possibly in the studio when Curtis Mantronic produced the first Just Ice album, because the Just Ice track that I'm going to play next incorporates two of the breaks off of this album. So we're going to play Back to the Old School by Just Ice.
There you go.
Love it.
Wicked tune, so good. Yeah, like you say, Curtis Mantronic pretty much produced, I think, was it the first three Just Ice albums, but he certainly did a wicked job. But this is the one that tends to get the B-boys doing their thing.
This and Cold Getting Dumb.
Totally, yeah.
Killer tracks off this
Yeah,
track.
which we did play on this show as well. Yeah, fantastic.
He's got good taste.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, this track incorporates two of the breaks off of that Ultimate Breaks and Beats album.
Yeah.
You got Give It To You by UPP and also Jackie Robinson's Pussyfooter.
Yeah, totally.
German disco classic.
Yeah, which I have not got. Not only on this album, but yeah.
So this is a great tune. I mean, kind of demonstrates quite well Mantronic's production techniques at the time.
Yeah, totally. He was awesome. Boy, in the 80s, he pretty much couldn't do anything wrong, could he?
He can now, though.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. Shame on you, Curtis.
But I love this tune.
Yeah,
this
wicked.
and Cold Getting Dumber, absolute stormers off this album. The rest of it's a bit filler. You know, it's like Latoya. I quite like.
Yeah, I think it was good because it was big at the time, and Mike Allen used to play it a lot and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, back then, because we were teenagers, we liked any record that was rude and had swear words in.
That's right, and was about shagging basically and stuff. Yeah.
So it appeals to me less now.
Yes,
so
of course.
This and Cold Getting Dumb are awesome.
Totally. Right, so we are going to one of your tracks now.
Yeah, we're going to play a track off the last Criminal Minds EP. The EP being The Droids You're Looking For.
Yep.
We're going to play a track called Utility Room Session.
Wicked. Here we go.
Yeah, this is lovely.
Wicked tune.
The title of this track, Utility Room Session, comes from the origin of the tune, where it was actually recorded.
In the utility room.
In a safety utility room at his house in Northampton.
Oh, right.
We knocked it together in one afternoon, just one of those things that comes together really quickly. I was messing around with a sample, a John Barry sample from the TV series The Adventure from the early 70s, and then just threw a few beats up around it, chopped it up, edited it.
Easy as that, innit, by the sounds of it.
And the guys changed things up slightly. They started doing 4 bars each rather than doing whole verses each. So it's a new way of doing it for us.
Cool.
I think it works quite well. We're going to use the same technique on the next record as well.
It works out brilliantly.
brilliant artwork.
Yeah, fantastic.
As well.
Yeah, courtesy of the main man, Andy Noonan from Warped Ethics.
There you go.
I told him exactly what I wanted, and I got it.
Yeah, he's a bit of a taskmaster, this one, honestly. He's been bossing us around the
Gets the
shed.
job done.
That's fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Is this still available?
There's
Yeah.
about 8 or 9 this week at the moment.
Is it?
Yeah.
Then we managed to cram 9 tracks onto one single bit of vinyl, but still staying within the limits of 12 minutes a side. We decided to record loads of short tracks rather than kind of 5 or 6 minutes.
Which is good because it kind of makes it more interesting sometimes as
Yeah,
well, doesn't it?
yeah. Well, we didn't have that knowledge when we done Guilty as Charged.
Right.
We just put loads of tracks on there and didn't realise you had to keep it over a certain time to keep it nice and loud and punchy.
Yeah.
But now, we've got the knowledge now.
Cool. As we've already played a couple of tracks from Guilty as Charged, in previous shows and stuff, we're not actually going back that far, but we've got so many good new stuff that he's going to be playing, and we've got an exclusive one, right, coming up next.
Yeah, we're going to play Propanol by Axe, who you will meet later on.
Yes.
He's going to poke his head in.
Oh, he's a lovely fella.
I live with Axe. He's a graffiti artist and an MC from Adelaide, Australia, and we'll be playing Propanol, the first track that we've done in collaboration.
Cool, well let's go there now.
Right, so you want to talk about this a bit, Ian?
Well, it incorporates a Bob James track, you might know,
Yeah.
Valley of the Shadows.
Which was, nabbed by Caribbean Racket, I think, back in the day as well.
Yeah. And just a beat that I'd been knocking together for a completely unrelated project. I was doing some music for an animation
right.
a friend of mine was putting together based around insects. So I had loads of insect noises in there and a beat rattling around.
You can take out some of Daddy Long next if you want.
Yeah, plenty of them in here.
But it never ended up kind of materialising in that form.
Right.
So when I played it to Axe, he fell in love with it, and then we turned it into this.
It's fantastic, I have to say, it's brilliant. It's so good.
This is going to be coming out on his self-funded, self-released EP shortly. I say shortly, probably early next year.
So there you go.
We're just putting the finishing touches to the record at the moment.
And Axe is doing the artwork as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I normally like to be in control of things, but he's like he's quality control on this project.
Well, it's fantastic. And you heard it here first, at least 5 months before it actually comes out. So there you go, wicked.
We get it in the shed.
Yeah, it's a shame you can't really hear it because we're chatting over it, but honestly, believe me, it's fantastic. So good. Yeah.
When it comes close to the time, we'll get our hands on the vinyl and we'll remind you it's all coming out.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. Right, wicked. Well, anyway, we've got an amazing interview coming up right now with this man. So here we go. So, welcome, Spatts from the Criminal Minds.
Thanks for having me in your little shed.
It
is a little shed.
It is a little shed.
But it will look bigger when it's on screen.
It is. It's a bit of a TARDIS, a funk TARDIS that we like to think of. Well, no, cheers for coming in. It's great to see you. As ever, and I always say this, but how did you first get into music per se?
Well, I was kind of around at the right time when kind of hip hop first exploded in the UK.
Yeah.
I was of that age, so like a lot of other people, I bought those electro albums. That was my first inroad into it, really. I was breaking and body popping, and that was the soundtrack to our dancing.
And what sort of year would this be?
We're talking about 83, 84.
Right.
I mean, I know it's things happened before then in the UK, but
but I mean,
for me, that's when the provincial areas. I mean, I was in Milton Keynes, so that's when it hit us.
Yeah.
I remember kind of discovering these albums in Boots when they had their own record department.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my kind of inroad into the whole thing. I mean, and also things like Blue Monday, Burn New Order. We were dancing to all that kind of stuff.
Because there was a crossover, because it was electronic. Obviously, you could pop, to that as well as some of the stuff that was on electro. Yeah,
we didn't have the internet, obviously, so we were joining the dots ourselves.
Yeah.
Trying to find out the connection between these things, and there was a connection because. Obviously, even with New Order, kind of, they went to New York and recorded with Arthur Baker. Yeah. Confusion, and so the whole thing was connected, but we had to unravel it for ourselves.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
And some of it's only becoming clear to me now.
From that, how did you then sort of like get into the actual sort of like making music, or was there a period before that? I mean, did it get so heavily into your life that you had to sort of like pursue it?
Well, I mean, as it had happened kind of in the late 70s with people that got into punk,
Yeah.
this was our punk music, okay? There was an open invite. Get involved, make the music. You don't have to have any musical skills. You can just do it.
Yeah.
Whereas they would be told they could pick up a bass or a guitar, we were encouraged to kind of get on the turntables.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was all bedroom antics. I got my first set of decks, a pair of Citronics, and a phonic mixer. So
Same as me.
It was pretty shit. I mean, I had to relearn how to DJ again once I got my first set of techniques. So all the skills you'd picked up with the Citronics, you had to lose those.
That's right, because there were belt drives and everything, and you could sort of like manipulate it with your hands more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of manipulating records in the bedroom. You know, I didn't have any sampler. I didn't have any means of laying anything down other than a cassette deck. So yeah, it was just beat juggling, cutting back to back and stuff.
Yeah.
And cramming your bedroom full of all your mates, which was very important.
Yeah. And was there much of a scene in Milton Keynes at the time?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was based around college. A lot of the guys who got involved with me met through Bletchley College,
Right.
Halo and Ice Ski from Criminal Minds. That's where they met.
Yeah.
Had they not gone to that college, they wouldn't have met because they're from different towns.
Right, okay.
So that college was kind of integral to Criminal Minds being formed. I mean, originally it was a graffiti crew from Buckingham. Then Halo went to college, met Ice Ski, who kind of provided the vocals for the group. So then we moved on and started making music. I came in a little bit later, and kind of pulled the whole thing together. And that's how I see my role even today.
Pulling things together.
Yeah, the facilitator of stuff, you know, the kind of providing a kind of executive producer role as well as kind of hands-on production.
Sure.
You know, right, we're going to make a record, guys, you know, and this is how we're going to do it. What's your ideas? And then I pull the whole thing together.
So back in the late 80s, was it pretty much you instrumental in actually getting those guys together and actually saying, look, let's do something?
Yeah, I mean, it was my bedroom predominantly that everyone used to work into. You know, we'd have like 20 guys all in there. It was tighter fit than this place. But then when I first started actually making the music other than just manipulating turntables, it meant a trip to Northampton where I was recording at another guy's house. A guy called Lex Blackmore, who's you might know him as Blue Boy.
Yeah.
He's from Northampton, and he was a friend of ours. I used to have to travel up there with a stack of records, like I have today, with ideas in my head on how I was going to construct the tune and use his sampler to put stuff together. Come back to Milton Keynes with it recording onto a cassette tape, and that evening everyone would converge on my place to have a jam over the tape that I'd made.
Right.
That's how it was. Then eventually got myself an Atari, a plug-in cartridge for the side, a Replay 4 cartridge, started making tunes,
right,
you know, properly.
Yeah. And what sort of year was this now? Because obviously
Well, we can date Criminal Minds back to 85. That's when it first started as a graffiti crew, dancing, and then eventually making music. But we put our first record out in 1990, so somewhere in that grey period in between, we were actually starting to make tunes. It's a little difficult to remember exactly.
No, of course.
And the tape we were talking about a minute ago, what year was that?
That was, I believe, 85. That tape I had nothing to do with. That was when Ice Ski and Halo first met. That's how I was introduced to the guys before I kind of jumped on the whole thing. That tape, we're in the process of kind of cleaning up the audio at the moment. We're going to give it away as a free download.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Online.
And in that grey period, gunmetal period, between sort of 85 and 1990, you obviously were aware of the sort of like the UK scene and obviously the parallel US scenes that were going on in regards to hip hop. What were your sort of influences at that time, would you say?
Well, it's referred to as the golden age of hip hop.
Yeah.
So basically anything that Marley Marl hand touched was
Yeah.
kind of an inspiration to me.
Yeah.
I was into Boogie Down Productions as well. Yeah, a lot of, well, most of the US stuff from that time was like a hold dear in my heart.
Yeah.
As far as the UK was concerned, we all looked up to Music of Life,
Yeah.
which is quite ironic, really, because having at the moment access to the Music of Life archives, we're remixing and reissuing
A fair few bits, yeah.
Well, we've done riffing by Duke with remixes and put
Which
it
was
out.
awesome, which we've played on the show.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And something I'm going to play today, we've got remixes of Ragamuffin Hip Hop by Asher D and Daddy Freddy.
Excellent. Anything else in the pipeline? I mean, we will come to this obviously, but
Well, there's plenty of things going on at the moment. We've got a new 32 Troop record called Mayday, which is hopefully, we've still got to finalise details, but should be coming out on Beeline Recordings. That's a bit of a, well, as some people might know, 32 Troop is like Criminal Minds but featuring shitloads of other artists, which is quite difficult to now finish the project because there's so many people involved. Mayday involves about 21 different people, MCs, scratch DJs and stuff, and we've then taken it even further and we've commissioned about 12 different remixes and versions of it, some of which will end up on the vinyl, some of which will be like just for digital. But yeah, epic is the word for 32 Troops.
sounds it.
It's a bit like a Marvel kind of team up.
Yeah, it sounds it. I suppose we'll come on to that in a bit, but so hitting 1990, tell us a little bit about, well, I mean, you know, the first thing that you put down.
Well, by this time we'd got ourselves a sampling cartridge for the Atari, put together some tunes, but it meant kind of bouncing stuff down onto a Tascam cassette-based 4-track. So it was very, very kind of lo-fi compared to what we do now. That's how we finished the tunes. We overdubbed the vocals, and then we ended up with a body of material which we thought we would take the world over with. So naturally we headed down to Eddie Richards, who was also based in Milton Keynes. He was running Bad Recordings. Yes. And he'd put out 2 records by the Syndicate at that time.
That's right, yeah.
So we thought, he's bound to want to put our stuff out. We went down there all clad in our Criminal Minds hooded sweatshirts and record bags.
Right.
Well, we must have looked a right sight.
I want to see pictures.
Well, I might have to fake some pictures. But yeah, we sat in his studio, listened intensely to the stuff, and he didn't get it. He didn't really like it, and we were destroyed by the whole thing.
Right.
We left there, and I suppose it was the kind of the catalyst that started the whole thing for us, really. We were so fired up that someone hated what we thought was wonderful. We went and kind of rounded up all the cash to put it out ourselves.
Right.
Which was probably the best thing that could ever have happened. That whole DIY thing of the music carried on through to the actual production of the record and the release of the record.
Sure.
You know, the whole, you know, like Blade used to do, selling records out the back of his car.
Yeah.
That's what we did, and I thought a lot of the people that I've been inspired by and impressed by have done exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Guilty as Charged, the first Criminal Minds EP, has been on sale online for €1,000. So I don't think it would have been the same had it come out on Bad.
Yeah, no, oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, everything, like the actual label itself, I drew the picture of the robot on one side.
Right.
The other side is all Letraset.
Yeah.
You know, not like today where you can just do it all in software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how was it received when it came out? Because obviously it's worth a lot
Well,
now.
yeah, we went and pressed up 500 copies without having a distributor for the whole thing. So when the whole thing was finished, we ended up with boxes of records and nowhere to sell them. But we managed to get rid of them all in the end. You know, Greyhound took some stuff off of us, and some stuff went through various record dealers that came to our local record shop. They'd hear it there and take some copies of them and sell them on somewhere else.
Right.
But that's how we kind of got hooked up doing the hardcore stuff as well.
Which we'll come to. In regards to the Guilty as Charged stuff, I mean, it's actually in the Rare Record Price Guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite an accolade, I think, in itself, really. I mean, Jesus God, I mean, I think it's booked at 150 quid or something.
There's one on
isn't it?
there's one on Discogs today for 250 quid.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I wish I had one.
Yeah.
I wish
But-
If I can
I wish I had a
find copies,
No, I don't want any freebies. Let me know later. But no, I mean, no, because I had to go out and get the reissued sort of like, it was a double LP pack, isn't it?
On Reflex,
On
yeah.
Reflex, which I love, and we played on this show before. And before going on to the sort of like hardcore bit, because it kind of, I mean, it's very similar almost, isn't it? I mean, I suppose at the time, hardcore and UK hip hop was. Hip hop in general was coming to a little bit of a stalemate into where it was going. It was changing in direction, and I think that quite a few people tended to branch out into this new British sort of scene.
Yeah, well, I mean, people
and
like,
samples were
people
involved.
like Blacks
so yeah,
were kind of involved making hip hop, but also making instrumental,
Exactly.
kind of club tracks. So there was a connection. The second one was funded pretty much the same way as the first one. You know, we had to dip into our pockets to pull the money together for it. We didn't really see a kind of our money back on those things until many, many years later. It was almost like these were our calling cards for what we were, you know, what we could possibly do in the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for us, the difference was on those records, is we weren't sampling a lot of James Brown.
Yeah.
We weren't sampling a lot of funk, although we did. Occasionally,
it was predominantly the beats that were that were big funk breaks.
Yeah.
But the actual other samples were soundtracks and big classical sort of bits and horror films and all sorts of stuff.
There was the soundtrack stuff, but also we were sampling bands like Duran Duran, The Chauffeur, a Sheffield band called Chack. I don't know if you've heard of those guys. They were on Fon Records.
Right.
Yeah. So we were like taking kind of slightly alternative music and combining it with funk and making something that other people weren't doing. Also things like Adam and the Ants as well. Funneling and channeling in all our influences on our taste in music.
Yeah.
No matter how bizarre and diverse they were.
But they were brilliant, I have to say, because I mean, listening to them, you know, back then and now, the fact that they are so different, and the fact that they are these very powerful samples that sort of like go with it is brilliant. I mean, what made you go down that route rather than what everyone else had been doing in regards to sort of like, say, the funk samples or even some of the rock samples or whatever?
Well, I suppose it was access to the records. They were there. There was a stack of records, my collection, on the side, and Kings of the Wild Frontier by Adam and the Ants was there. It was one of my favourite albums, so it was a natural thing for me to take stuff off of it.
Yeah, which is what hip hop's all about.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
for me, hip hop kind of works when you're kind of sampling, when you've got that element of old recordings recycled, kind of revisited and kind of re-edited from old recordings. Hip hop doesn't work for me when it's produced in really big studios. Where everything is clean and it's all plugins and drum machines and stuff. It doesn't quite work for me. It's got to have that dusty element, because I'm a record collector and I'm a lover of music, you know, everything from like Northern Soul through to krautrock, you know. So I don't really get off on the kind of predominantly electronic kind of hip hop stuff.
Sure. No.
I like it to have soul.
Yeah. So do we.
Yes.
Yeah. And obviously, as we were mentioning earlier, around about the same sort of time, obviously there was sort of a different sort of like stance where sort of like UK music in general was going. I think obviously at the tail end of the 80s, you had acid house, you know, rave, as well as hip hop and everything, and everyone could actually sort of like go to a bit of a jam and probably listen to all of these things. I mean, and so, I mean, was that anything to do with how you sort of sidestepped a little bit and went into the sort of hardcore drum and bass sort of arena?
There's a couple of important things to Criminal Minds taking this other direction at the time. And one was, there's a club called Outer Limits that was based in Milton Keynes. Eddie Richards used to run it. He was the resident DJ there. Right. And like you said, back in those days, you could hear hip hop, acid house, and all, you know, funk, soul, all under one roof, and that's what it was all about. The music, the tempo used to build up all night, and people used to go there to listen to all different styles of music, not like now. So we would go there and kind of come into contact with acid house, and that would seep into you and become an influence. And the other thing was, there was a record shop in Milton Keynes called World Beat. A good friend of mine, Picky, used to run the shop. and he was the guy that suggested that perhaps we ought to have a go at doing something a bit more kind of, I don't know, kind of clubby. So we had no kind of idea how we was going to do this, but did have a go, and the result was a track called Dance of the Parasites, which came out on an EP, which is basically us speeding the brakes up, still using the same kind of musical influences, and we ended up sampling ABBA on there, and yeah, I mean, that track kind of worked, but it was then kind of totally overshadowed by our next attempt at it, which was Baptised by Dub,
which is still an anthem today, I think. Because I know that there's quite a few people that are very excited watching this because of that tune, as well as sort of like other people that are interested in hip hop. So there's actually sort of two avenues, I guess. I remember when it came out, and I used to cut it up all the time just to go with the flow bit. Because, like yourself, you sometimes you can't help but hear this sort of stuff, and sometimes if you are at a party or a jam, that tends, that was what was obviously very popular.
What a lot of people liked about that tune and other tunes like that was that the B-boys didn't feel guilty about going out and dancing to that kind of music because
it had wicked scratching.
It wasn't techno. It was getting played at the places that techno was getting played, but it wasn't techno. It had breaks. It had a kind of a psychedelic kind of feel to it.
Yeah, that's right. With DJ Halo going off big time on it, and MC Duke being sampled and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I tell kind of young guys now who are into drum and bass. About the fact that I invented drum and bass. I mean, I know total exaggeration and probably
you've heard it here first.
Probably
people.
Not true. Definitely not true. But us and a few other producers were kind of pivotal in drum and bass coming into existence, because prior to that it was techno, it was 4 to the floor. We were introducing breaks to the whole thing, and before it was even coined the phrase hardcore, we were making these tunes.
That's right. I mean,
it became hardcore, it became drum and bass, it became jungle.
Yeah, that's right.
But these were the prototypes,
and especially yours, because it had the reggae sort of dub sort of like feel to it, like and then sped up with the breakbeat and stuff. Yeah, no, fantastic.
It's actually been re-released just before Christmas.
Really?
On Tribal Steppers.
And is it going to be the same track, or is it going to be other versions of it?
Baptised by Dub, Rebaptised by Dub, and 3 remixes by various guys. But
okay,
I'll give you the details of that.
Can't wait. So, I mean, after having, was there much more? Did you sort of like stay with that scene for a little while, or did you even become involved with that scene, or were you basically a hip hop artist who did a few 12s and then sort of? We did an awful lot of stuff on the hardcore scene and then the kind of proto drum and bass scene. Yeah. Releasing stuff on White House Records and then La Bello Blanco. Right. And in fact, it was the death of Criminal Minds, the hip hop group. Right. Because we'd taken that route, it overtook all the gigs we were doing. Where we were doing PAs at raves. Yeah. It kind of heralded the death of Criminal Minds, the hip hop group. Right. But we're still releasing hip hop tunes now. So what happened in the meantime? We kind of all got back together and said, let's start making the music that we love. We originally was into. Yeah. Yeah. And you were saying a little bit earlier on that you were involved with TVR Records. TCR Records. TCR Records, yeah. So your excursions into sort of like hardcore drum and bass and all that sort of stuff, did it then end up getting into that sort of like the breaks sort of like thing? Getting back into making hip hop, there was a funny route back to the whole thing. I mean, obviously I was making hardcore, then a bit of drum and bass, and then what happened was Liam Howlett from Prodigy turned round and said, will you do a remix for me? Right. And I told him that Criminal Minds had split, and he goes, well, that's not a problem, why don't you just set up a new group? So we formed a group called Environmental Science. Right. Done the remix of Poison by Prodigy. Yeah. That led on to doing a remix for The Shaman, and then it led on to us being signed to Skint Records. Right. So we started making big beat, and then eventually breakbeat, which took me through TCR Recordings and a few other labels, and then I wound my way back slowly to hip hop. But I suppose the one thing that's all in common is that they're all big beat, break beat, drum and bass. It's all sample
I love
music.
it. I love the breaks.
Exactly. It's all to do with like samples and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, breakbeat in the late 90s. Obviously, you had, you know, yourselves on sort of TCR and Skint Records, which are up there with like Frescanova and all these other sort of labels, which seemed to me always like they were ex-hip hop people trying to make hip hop breaks in a way that they probably liked sounding about 10 years before. A lot of the, you know, I mean, because I was on Frescanova, so I know, you know, that's the sort of like thing that I was trying to do, and it was a weird way of getting back into hip hop without it being called hip hop.
It's quite a common story. There's loads of people. I mean, we've got Crash Slaughter from Two Tone Committee. Was eventually with Monkey Mafia.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's happened to a lot of us. We've had similar kind of routes through the whole scene. Various different genres of music. Well, I remember my first jaunts to London on the train, record buying. These were like solitary trips. So it was totally anonymous. I didn't know anyone. I didn't take anyone with me. So they were like times of quiet contemplation. I'd listen to Mike Allen on the Friday night on Capital Radio, and on the Saturday take the trip to London to Groove Records and to Virgin to pick up tunes. And that was a kind of a ritual for me. That went on and on and on. I'd listen to the tunes that he'd quite possibly only just received that day, and I'd be buying them the next day from Groove. That was a regular kind of ritual. Pattern for me. Yeah. That's what I did. That's how I built up my my knowledge and education of music.
And was that predominantly sort of like the hip hop stuff?
It was predominantly hip hop, although. There was a magazine from the time, I think, that Morgan Khan was involved with. Do you remember the name of that?
What, Streetwave, was it?
Streetwave, yeah. That was a bit of an education for me as well, because obviously nowadays we got the internet, so you can do all the research yourself at home. Back then there was no one telling us anything, you just had to do it yourself.
Yeah.
But this magazine was a bit of an insight for me, and that led me to kind of go to places like Virgin Megastore, because that was like a really good place to pick up tunes. It was excellent,
yeah.
And I used to pick up kind of go-go records and kind of Parliaments things and stuff like that, you know. That's where I would get my kind of my breaks from. That's where I would get my funk and soul and just general weirdness, my krautrock, and you know, all those things were picked up during that period from this huge place on Oxford Street.
Yeah. And I remember in Groove Records, I don't know if you remember, but there used to be a thing on the counter that had all of the Ultimate Breaks and Beats tracks, because they never listed them who actually did them, but they had all of the artists against them, and you could try and sort of like get as many as you could and then run away and try and find these originals and stuff like that. And like you say,
some of the credits on the Ultimate Breaks and Beats albums are completely wrong as well.
Oh yeah, I was looking for Save the World by Jimmy Van Leer for years until I found out it was someone else. But yeah, and
those albums, funny you should mention it, those were that was a bit of an education for me as well. Like I said, prior to that, the electro albums for hip hop and electro, and that was kind of a way of me finding out stuff. But the Ultimate Breaks and Beats albums were also, as far as old recordings were concerned, that was my my textbook, my reference book.
Yeah, totally. And did you then go out and sort of like collect sort of like samples, as in sort of like the sevens or the originals of the one? Or?
I'd mostly pick up albums, tried to get hold of original albums. But, singles wasn't really my thing at the time. I only had limited funds, so I tried to pick up as much as possible for the least amount of money. So albums was the way forward for me.
Yeah.
I mean, that even applied for to kind of picking up hip hop. You know, I would get the occasional 12, but I was a big fan of buying US hip hop albums.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did now, because you know I've got quite a collection of things, including one particular one I've brought along today to play.
Yeah.
A big favourite of mine.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
One sec. Right, so we've just been chatting about the unique art style and the sci-fi sort of element of Criminal Minds.
That comes from the fact that all of us have been kind of big sci-fi geeks, nerds, aficionados. I was into graphic novels and comic books and stuff, and reading a lot of science fiction novels,
Yeah.
Philip K. Dick and Michael Moorcock and stuff like that. So all of these things were kind of in my head, or in our heads, when we sat down to make music. You know, from the titles of the tracks through to kind of the general vibe we tried to create in the music. Criminal Minds could be existing in the present day, or they could be several dimensions to the left, or 200 years in the future. We're quite vague about the exact kind of location of where we're transmitting from. That's the general kind of aesthetic we like to conjure up with the music, the way the records look, the way the records sound. Yeah, we're basically nerds. we're proud about it, nerd hip hop. I got back into hip hop with Criminal Minds because Halo, who had been kind of relighting the flame as far as the band was concerned a little while beforehand, he was unable to attend certain gigs in Europe for several reasons. So I was asked to come back in to the live outfit to carry the baton when we went to do gigs in Europe. That led on to me getting involved and doing some more productions with the group, and then eventually we started putting some more records out. A few years ago we put out Regroup the Loops, which was the first full EP that I was back on board with, and then this year the Droid You're Looking For EP. We managed to cram 9 tracks onto one single piece of vinyl.
But it does seem that these last few years there's been a big increase in the sort of output that you guys have actually been doing under all the different guises that
since the 2011 comp, I suppose.
Well, I don't want to make this a big kind of advert for Facebook, but Facebook has played. Here's that Daddy Longlegs again.
Oh, there's about 3 of them in here.
Facebook's played a big part in all these things happening. Me being in contact with people, because a lot of the people that were making hip hop all throughout this time, or may have fallen off and come back into it again, in places like as remote as Wales and Scotland and stuff. Anywhere apart from London, we were all isolated from each other during the times when we were first making hip hop.
Yeah.
Where rarely did anyone come into contact with each other. We didn't even know what other people were doing. We'd see the occasional record and see where it was produced. But because of Facebook, social network and stuff, we can communicate with each other. So I've become friends with people that I've respected from the early days of UK hip hop, and obviously America as well. So so it's linked people up, and this has led on to us this huge resurgence of what I call the real UK hip hop scene.
So being sort of like into hip hop in the late 80s, there, people in Britain already had a tailor-made package of stuff that was coming from America, and there was obviously a mystique of what had happened in the 70s in the Bronx and so forth that kids could latch onto and really sort of like
it was a mythology.
It really was, yeah.
Yeah, that we kind of fell in love with, the subway trains,
the burnt out condominiums and stuff like that.
All of that stuff. It was very romantic to us, very exotic, and we totally fell for it. Yeah. I mean, I've been to New York and I went to a lot. I've visited a lot. I stayed in Brooklyn and visited a lot of the places that were name checked in records, and it was like amazing. I was like wide-eyed and staring up at buildings and stuff and pointing at road signs and stuff. Yeah. Bit of a tourist. And if you've got that mindset that you're doing this for the love, and you're doing it because you want to leave behind some really cool music and some great memories for people coming to your nights, then that's a good place to be.
Yeah, totally.
Once you get it into your head, I need to make loads of money out of this, and then progress in my career up the music ladder, I mean, you're bound to fail, because I've been involved in that whole thing when I was doing environmental science, the whole thing about signing the big record deal, and it left a nasty taste in my mouth, to be honest with you. I mean, the time at Skint was cool, but when the big deals were offered, it kind of, I fell into the trap of celebrating far too early, because signing that record deal is not the end of the story, it's the start. You haven't even begun. It's not even worth popping the champagne corks, because the chances are you're going to deliver an album that's going to be pulled apart and maybe even shelved.
Yeah.
So I don't do it for those reasons anymore. All I want to do, I mean, I've got my own label, Stay on Target, and I release Criminal Minds stuff and 32 Troop on Fat Hop, and obviously Beeline Recordings now. All I want to do is put out vinyl. It has to be vinyl. We do the digital download
that's
as
what we
well.
like to hear.
We do the digital download as well, but that's a backup. I mean, it's got to come out on vinyl because that's what it's all about.
Because we have a few people that come in and say it doesn't feel like they've released something unless it's been on vinyl.
No, I mean, anyone could put an album together and put it up on Bandcamp or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, a record label doesn't even exist until it comes out with a physical product. And in my mind, I mean, obviously CDs have died a death. Yeah. It's got to be vinyl. It's got to be kind of bespoke, handcrafted. The sleeves have got to look as good as possible. The artwork's got to look fantastic. The vinyl's got to be good quality, and the tunes have got to be fantastic. And together, you've got this amazing thing that you can hold in your hand.
Exactly.
I mean, I remember like when I was growing up with vinyl, spending hours reading all the credits on albums, kind of everything. I needed to know all the information. You know, who produced it, who played on it and stuff, what instruments. Do you remember when albums used to list all the Moogs and everything?
Yeah.
You know, there was a phase where everyone had to list every electronic piece of equipment they'd used on the track.
So, what about some of the collaborations that you've been working with anybody else at all?
Well,
is there someone sitting outside?
Oh, I didn't know you was here.
Wow, look at that!
Come in.
What are you doing in my garden?
You can just sit on Ian's knee if you want.
This is Axe.
You're in. That's good.
Graffiti artist, MC, housemate.
Wow.
We live together. Yeah,
right.
24-hour working.
Well, it's a bit like, you know, like the Monkeys TV series.
Yeah.
We're like a hip hop version of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
We've also got Furious Styles as well. Do you want to stick your head in?
Stick your head in.
You got to get in as well. He's got two knees.
I'll poke my hat in.
Yeah.
This is Furious
Hang on.
Styles.
Come in a bit more there.
Down.
Furious
There you go.
Styles.
Yeah,
Busiest the shed's ever been.
Basically, our house is like a hip hop house. There's a beat running constantly, especially when Andy's over.
There's spray cans rattling.
When you're trying to get some sleep, there's like a thump going on all the time.
Yeah.
Constant loop.
So what are you doing then?
Yeah.
Well, I'm working on my art constantly. You know, little canvases and designs and stuff.
Yeah.
But together with Spatts through this beat recently.
Yeah.
We've called Propanol.
Yeah.
And so that's.
I didn't sell it to him, by the way.
You didn't download it.
We just
he
know
illegally
the drugs.
downloaded it from YouTube. We're basically pulling together his first proper vinyl release, which includes a collaboration that we've done together, Propanol, which we'll play today, and a bunch of other tracks that he's recorded over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, and I've been waiting, you know, sort of to hit the vinyl really. So it's, you know, Ian's helping to put it all together, and really looking forward to now just focusing on that and
Nice.
more releases out on vinyl afterwards as well.
And what's your input, if you don't mind me asking?
And the MC, and I'm gonna, you know, obviously do the artwork,
The graphics as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So hopefully we'll have some, you know, limited released art and music all coming out together.
You might notice from his accent that he's
Antipodean.
Yeah.
Born in Adelaide.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah. And then came over to the UK about 20 years ago now.
And what drew you to the UK, my friend?
Football.
Oh, right, okay.
I was like playing semi-pro and knocking on the pros' doors.
Oh, really?
Right.
They were interested, and I came over, follow their dreams, you know.
Yeah.
But like a car accident out the way.
Oh, shit.
Focus on.
Well, it's a bit like, you know,
Yeah,
setbacks leading on to like new
Different
opportunities.
things. Yeah.
Focused on my art a lot more, and it
Yeah.
started going well. So now I'm focused on the MCing part as well.
Nice. Well, yeah, we can't wait to hear that.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, totally.
Brilliant.
Wicked.
The night.
The nights,
Oh yeah, right. Hip Hop Owes Me Money.
Yeah.
Part 6 is coming up in December the 14th.
Yeah.
Well, it was a constantly evolving thing. A few years ago I was running an art centre as a volunteer in Milton Keynes called Madcap, and because I was running the building, I had the opportunity of using the building free of charge to put on something. So we put on Hip Hop Owes Me Money, and drew in loads of people that have been involved in the local scene since the 80s making hip hop, and we put on an extravaganza, a bit like the last scene out of Beach Street.
Right. Did you wear the same sort of clothes as Melly Mel?
The last scene off of Wild Style, you know, the amphitheatre, you know, something like that.
Busy Bee suit, come on.
Yeah. So we didn't have any idea that there was going to be a whole series of these events. We did it with just local artists. Obviously Criminal Minds played, and a few others. But they've kind of moved on. I stopped working there, and moved it to a different location. I now do a project space that's connected to Milton Keynes Gallery, which is basically a blank canvas. The whole place is just like white walls and nothing in there. They use it for various things. It is a project space. So we dress the whole thing up, turn it into a place that looks fantastic and sounds fantastic.
An apocalyptic nightmare.
Well, actually, no. It's yeah. Well, we have flashing lights,
Gunmetal.
gunmetal and olive drab. Oh, there's plenty of camo now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So as the series of events have kind of moved on, we've pulled in some of our heroes from the UK scene. So we've had Criminal inspired play, Suspect from Derby have come down. We've had Duke, MC Duke play.
Because then he lives up in Oxford or something right now, so he's not too far away really, is he?
Yeah, so we had Duke play. We've had Son of Noise at the last one.
Wow.
Yeah. Mr. Bose came down from Glasgow with Big Al.
That was dope.
And the next one in December, we've got MCM from Caveman headlining and Criminal Minds playing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And obviously the Four Pillars events are sort of like going on as well in London. Have you guys had anything to do with those? Because obviously some of the same
they're run
artists...
by Son of Noise.
Yeah,
guys from Son of Noise. So that was a proper link up.
Yeah.
They came up and played at our thing. They were impressed, and we all mutually realised that we're trying to do the same thing.
Because theirs is in November this year.
Yeah.
So we support their events. They support our events.
Brilliant.
And so it's like I said, it's another great thing that's kind of occurred because people have been able to contact each other via Facebook.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Knock on each other's doors.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be the next Four Pillars is going to be quite a busy weekend, because on the Friday we've got the Louder Than the Bomb thing that Inch is putting together. Criminal Minds will be playing that.
Yeah.
Saturday night we've got Four Pillars.
Yeah.
And then the next day we've got the Zulu Nation Meeting of Minds thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be a hip hop weekend in London.
Yeah, when I'm in India. Damn it.
Skype.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know what my mother-in-law would make of that.
Hooking up with Four Pillars to do a joint thing, something bigger, on a bigger scale than either of us were doing individually.
Yeah.
That's just talk at the
A
moment.
bit like a UK Fresh 2014.
Well,
or
I mean,
something.
there's the Boom Bap Festival that's only just passed, you know, so
Yeah.
I'm not trying to compete with something like that.
Sure.
So we'll see how things go.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ideas that we could pull in. I mean, we were thinking about bringing someone over from the US to headline a bigger scale thing,
Yeah.
supported by UK artists.
Yeah. You can always come down and play at the Paradise with us as well, you know.
Thanks for the invite.
Cool. It's been an absolute honour having you
been
guys
brilliant,
in.
yeah.
Really, really has been a pleasure. Daddy long legs aside, and lack of space and so forth. Sorry out there, but yeah, honestly, it's been absolutely fantastic.
It's been great being here.
Yeah, no. Cheers,
outside.
cheers for making the way down. Luckily, it's a nice night. Anyway,
We'll play some more tunes now.
yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Cheers.
Yeah,
This is an unreleased.
Unfinished.
unfinished. Yeah, look at this. So you probably won't hear another version like this.
No, you won't do actually, because so far it's only got ice ski on the track. It's going to have safety in the finished version, but I thought I'd play you a version. I basically edited together a version with just ice ski on it at the moment, because we haven't recorded it safely for you to have a listen to.
Well, it's bloody brilliant. Yeah, we feel honoured. And yeah, you're never going to hear this again.
Yeah, I'm sorry to break all the rules though.
No. When rules are meant to be broken, really, aren't they? So, this is
Because it's coming on vinyl.
Exactly.
It's the only reason we broke the rules.
awesome.
So I have to say that when I watch your shows and you're nodding your heads to every single tune, I was thinking, how am I going to be able to compete with that? Because I'm not really a head nodder inside. So it's going to look quite weird, I suppose. I mean, like a statue.
You'll just look normal, we'll look like heads.
That's alright, because don't worry about it.
He's foot tapping.
He is.
Honest.
Clicking his little fingers. Nice, mate, this is fantastic.
And when's
So
this going to be
fantastic.
out?
Well, the EP's not finished yet, so when it's finished, we'll rush it out as soon as the last track's mixed down. Hopefully early next year.
Cool.
Busy part of the first part of the year for you.
Yeah, I'm going to be able to get any sleep.
Right, so from this wonderful nugget, which we should play more of, I think, to be honest with you. But what we're going to do now is actually play one of an old track. That's one of your faves, or what?
Well, when I was thinking of picking tunes out for the show, I was thinking I want to play a tune that sums up where I'm coming from as far as putting hip-hop together. This track by Sugar Bear, Ready to Penetrate, kind of incorporates so many different records in the final production. You've got at least 2 Cool on the Gang tracks, Rocket in the Pocket by Cerrone, and a whole bunch of other things. So when you consider that many number of ingredients coming into making one track, that kind of is where I'm coming from as far as the construction of it.
Cool. Well, let's go there now then, shall we?
Conscious of nodding my head now.
I'm conscious of not nodding my head. Yeah, I love this tune. Everyone seems to go on about don't scandalise my knee side, but for me this is the better tune.
I know, I have to remember when I bought this when it first came out, and it wasn't until I actually turned it over and thought, shit, you know what I mean, this is
It was the same
so
for me.
good.
I didn't even know this tune existed. I was that lazy. I was so kind of enamoured by Don't Scandalise Mine, I didn't even bother checking the other side.
And he was pretty much a one-hit wonder, wasn't he? I think he did one track with Richie Rich, like the English Richie Rich, didn't he?
Yeah, that was on Music Alive. No, it was
on G Street.
Yeah, that's right,
on G Street, but this was, I think, was only 12, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, fantastic though.
Absolutely brilliant record.
So good.
Not a brilliant rapper. I have to
Sometimes
say.
it doesn't matter though, does it? You know
No,
what I mean?
it doesn't matter to Tim Dog.
No, yeah.
But it's,
God rest his soul, if he is
that's what I'm
indeed
saying.
dead.
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes it's that's just an ingredient in the finished thing.
Exactly.
And you don't necessarily have to be the best MC in the world as long as the whole finished product, or I say
Totally,
the whole finished record is an awesome tune.
That's right, totally.
But I do not know where this sample's from. It sounds like it should be the Jackson 5.
It does, doesn't it?
Almost like
Answers in on a postcard, people.
Yeah, get back to me on that one.
Wicked. Yeah, so good. And we're going to go to a bit of funk now, right?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the next album is an album that I picked up in Virgin Mega Store back in the day. I've sampled from it, but I'm not going to play a track that I have sampled, but it is one of my favourites. It's by Parliament Funkadelic, a track called Dr. Funkenstein.
That's what Brad calls me sometimes.
Amongst other things.
Yeah,
And
prick.
And like Sugar Bear, Crystal says to me, he's ready to penetrate.
Sugar Bear does sound like a pet name for each other, doesn't it? Hey, Sugar Bear.
Sugar Bear ready to penetrate.
Are you ready for me to
you little
penetrate?
sauce monger.
Don't scandalise mine.
That's the crowd outside cheering for us.
Yeah, act shut it.
So what have we got here, Ian?
This is Dr. Funkenstein. It's off a live Parliament Funkadelic album from 1976. The album came out in 85, and like I said, I picked this up in the Virgin Mega Store in Oxford Street years ago. I sampled off of it. This is something I haven't sampled, but it was one of my favourite tunes. There's an accompanying film that goes with it, and if you watch the live concert that's on video, it's just mind-blowing. The costumes and the kind of the stage routines and everything are awesome, and all the sets as well. They've got like a UFO. The mothership actually does come down.
I have to say, I mean, it's not actually an album I've ever seen before. I mean, you know, I don't know why. You know
I got into George Clinton Parliament and Funkadelic via this album, not the other albums.
Really? Because I've got their other albums, but I just haven't come across this one.
I mean, that was my inroad. I've since got into the other albums, but this was when I first discovered it.
There's something about when you first discover something, it's always going to be like closest to you, isn't it? You know, it's fantastic. Anyway,
I mean, in the film, the bit where he comes down the steps as Dr. Funkenstein is just awesome. You've never seen a man move with such pimp styling as that.
Oh really?
Yeah. So check it out.
Yeah, totally. Maybe we should do that in the shed or a paradise. You never know. Wicked. Right, well, we got two more tracks. Criminal Minds fans out there. What's the next one that's coming up?
The next one we got coming up is our first release on our own label, Stay on Target.
Cool.
We had unprecedented access to the Music and Life archives to do remixes and reissues, and the first thing that we tackled was Duke's I'm Riffing, which came out on Fat Hop. The second
Which we played.
Thanks, guys. The second thing is what we're going to play next, which is our remixes of Ragamuffin Hip Hop by Asher D and Daddy Freddy.
So let's go there right now. Do like a bit of Asher D and Daddy Freddy.
Yeah.
Record breakers. Right.
Well, he did hold the record, didn't he?
He did. Until JC001 trumped him or something.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Trawling through the Music Alive archives, including the Husbands Convention album,
which I love.
I quite possibly have had all I can take of Asher D and Daddy Freddy.
Right.
I'm kind of all Asher D and Daddy Freddy out.
What about Thrash Pack?
Well, that was one possible option for a remix. I mean, I totally relate to Thrash Pack because they were,
at the time.
yeah, because they were like kind of coming from a rock side of things.
I think they had an American. I think they were from American families as well. So I think they had, apparently, and they're apparently brilliant b-boys too.
Yeah.
So I've heard.
So they were legitimate.
They were. Apparently they were, but obviously you listen back to it now, it probably doesn't quite sound that way.
Okay.
But this does. This sounds fucking brilliant.
Well, this is my remix of Ragamuffin Hip Hop, featuring the scratch talents of DJ Tones from Drunken Egypt.
Nice.
Yeah, which you'll hear in a little bit.
Which we will wait for.
Just about on cue, actually.
No.
So I should actually listen to my record before I come and turn up.
We never do.
But yeah, I'm particularly pleased with this track.
Oh, it's fantastic.
But like most things, it started off with something else. It was funnily enough, a track that I was working on with Axe.
All right.
That didn't come to anything. But
a Beatle documentary or anything like that.
No. But when I got the opportunity to work on Ashley and Daddy Freddy, I thought, well, I'll use this. It fits quite well.
Yes. Quite. It's wicked.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
What do you rate things?
Well, I love the beat and I love the original.
No, I'm
track.
saying Mixed Mag used to have its dancing men, didn't it?
Oh yeah.
So what do we get in the shed?
That's a tough one. Never thought.
Four Daddy Longlegs.
4 Daddy Longlegs.
4.5 nodding beards.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a Daddy Longlegs leg there. Sorry.
3 cans of Ronsil.
There you go.
A packet of Pampers.
Yeah, and a packet of Pampers, exactly.
That's good.
Yeah, so good.
Well, I'm going to leave that behind. That's your copy. Test press.
Fantastic. Could you sign it?
Yes.
Woohoo! Right, anyway, sorry about that. Very unprofessional.
Guests take note. Gifts.
You got to bring the product.
Yeah, totally. Right, so what have we got next?
Well, when we first started our relationship with Fat Hop Records to start releasing new Criminal Minds stuff, I done a remix for Jerome Hill as a 7-inch, which came out prior to Regroup the Loops. It was my first thing that I'd done with him on his label. It's a track called Headlock, which incorporates a very famous sample, Sandman. I was trying to rack my brains, but who Sandman?
Do you know what? I mean, it was like an old doo-wop group, so I don't even think it was actually a very famous group, was it? It was just a famous song. So.
Famous for being in what film? Back to the Future.
Back to Stand By Me as well.
In Animal House as well.
And 3D out of Philadelphia.
Yeah, if you want to instantly conjure up the 50s America, you can put Sandman in your tune or in your film.
Totally. Well, here we are. Here it is.
Just before we talk about this, the track we just played is out just before Christmas.
It is, yeah. We've had to delay the release date. There was a few technical problems in the production, but it should be out just before Christmas. Cool. We'll stay on target.
Cool. So tell us a bit about this one then.
Well, as I say, this is the first thing that I've done in conjunction with Jerome Hill from Fat Hop.
Right.
He basically said to me, I've done the B-side of the 7-inch, but I'm not happy with it. Do you want to have a go at it? And I said yes. So I came up with this kind of glitch hop kind of version. It's an instrumental.
Glitch hop, I like that.
Glitch hop,
You'll have to use that.
Incorporating some very important ingredients. We've got Sandman by a Denmark group that we can't remember.
It will be coming along here now.
And obviously LL Cool J with his famous recitation of the alphabet.
From It Gets No Rougher.
Yes.
Yeah. It's fantastic. Oh, and a bit of Funky President in there.
Yes.
James Brown, yeah.
I mean, I remember doing this, finishing it, not being completely happy with it, forgetting about it, even getting delivery of the 7-inch and not really properly listening to it. But recently, falling in love with it again, and as a consequence, spamming everyone to death by posting it on their wall. But
I love it. I come over like, oh, wicked, something new. Brilliant. We didn't talk to you about Arthur Baker, did we? And it's another story, folks. We'll have to get him back in the shed.
We'll have to hunt back in.
The reason we didn't talk about it is so I could trick you into having me back.
Yeah, that's fine, no problem.
Quarter 1, 24 even if all his listeners come out, you have to come back and play it.
Yes, I will do, yeah.
There you go.
Well, this was going to be the last track, but we couldn't really leave it without actually playing Baptised by Dub. Well, I couldn't leave it without playing that anyways. Well, it's such a wicked, massive tune, so... yeah, that's right. Exactly, yeah. So, fantastic bit of hip-hop to a fantastic bit of old school. Here we go.
Yo, what's up?
Yeah, I think you know what this is.
Could not play it. Could not play it. Yeah, so, yeah. Don't have to say much about this really. I loved it when it came out because, well, it's just got all the great ingredients of a wicked track really.
And I've noticed that you've got it on the original label because it was re-released on White House, where most people would have got it on White House. This is on Wellbeing.
I got it when it first came out, so there you go.
This is a rarer version.
Well, I got it in Slough. There you go.
Well,
Slough Record Centre, I
You
think.
can't get more rare than that, like the original pressing bought in Slough.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, wicked. There you go. So anyway, this is us saying a big see you later and a massive thank you for Spatts for coming in to the shed. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, and a big sorry to the two guys who've been left outside because there's no room in there. Yeah, but
What?
there you go. But yeah, so don't forget, Spatts is going to be coming down the Paradise, which we're playing at.
We will be there Sunday.
6th of October.
Yeah, our first Paradise social where we're going to do a bit of filming for the show. We're going to play a ridiculous amount of tracks. We've got some special guest DJs and the food's brilliant as well.
Yeah,
so.
that's right. Yeah, we got Disco Jeff, Leonard Jeffries.
I hope you've got enough corners for nerds to converge in.
Totally,
So much nerdy chat there, yeah.
And hopefully Tough Cut will play as well. We haven't actually asked him yet, but hopefully Tough Cut, please play.
It'll be straight from Itch FM.
Straight from Itch FM, straight to the Paradise. There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, honestly, cheers. Thanks so much. It's been an absolute honour.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah,
There you go.
Cheers, mate.
There you go.
See you later.
Go with the flow.